Really funny. Really funny.
What do you mean I'm funny?
It's funny, you know.
Good morning. ROCKFLUX Live. Tony Caravan.
You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
You know, one of these days I'll get it perfect. And here we are. It's 4:22 a.m. in the morning, and a relative of mine told me, "Yo, what are you doing these things for? You should only do it once a week for 20 minutes. You only got 3 people watching." Well, oh no. Yeah, I know. The title of this show is, and I've always forget to load the title card for some ridiculous reason. Now, this one is like, kind of goes with the theme of today's show, which is first they tell you this, then they tell you that. You know, and my chat, which I don't look at, I just posted, says, enjoy your meal. The thing is, today is the Thursday, the 4th of November, 2021 to you folks. You know, but who knows what year it is. You can't trust anything. Can't trust anything you hear, been told, been taught. Everything you know may be wrong. And, you don't know what you don't know. So let's take a look at the
weekend.
No, I just keep doing that. Let's take a look at the
Weather Watch forecast.
I'm totally losing it, man. Anyway, that same swath of clouds that was in kind of across the midsection is kind of heading south, it seems. Cold weather is the theme for this week. Like I say, in my neck of the woods, it's currently like 34 degrees. Actually, it's 28 degrees outside. I was wondering why it's so cold in here, and I've got a couple layers on. 28 degrees outside. And the high today is going to be in the 40s, but the low again is going to be 27. And then the weekend's looking like, well, Friday's looking like it'll be in the mid 40s in the day again, but at night 29. And Saturday it's going to get maybe break 50, but it's still going to be freezing overnight. So maybe Monday we get a little bit of warming up and a little bit higher 50s, and the overnight goes above freezing. But basically, you know, and you could look at this map and see where you are and where you have cloud cover. And, you know, I mean, I don't know. I guess those blue clouds, are they noctilucent clouds, they call them? I mean, I can't seem to find anything, you know, on the site. This is a photo that was taken in literally just an hour or two ago. So from the satellite, NOAA satellite CONUS. So this is what things look like in all of our necks of the woods, so to speak. But yeah, it's going to be pretty much clear in the northeast today and overcast down in the southeast with maybe a little more, you know, maybe enough cloud action going on that there be precipitation in Texas. And the Pacific Northwest looks like, you know, the Pacific Northwest does. You know, let's face it, things there haven't really changed. You know, the more things change, the more things stay the same, as they say. So, anyway, that's your...
The Weather Watch forecast.
Yeah, I guess I slept 7 hours, maybe 6 or 7 hours last night. I tried to stay in bed. I stayed in bed for 8 hours, you know. And, you know, the old ticker's racing this morning for some reason. Don't know why. Calcification or something like that. I don't know. You know, that's the theme of this show is, and the title card, which I was looking for before, which we'll bring up, is so what are you supposed to eat? Right? You know, and I had a doctor's appointment yesterday, you know, of course, you know, just to repeat. Yeah.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
And I got some copies because I had to go to an ER back in August, was it? Yeah, end of August, end of August. And they were out of the system, the hospital system in my town. I think I told you about that. I ended up having to get an ambulance, and they said, where do you want to go? When I said to the hospital, and they said, well, the hospital here is closed. There's no room at the inn. It was really weird. And so I had to go for like a half-hour ride to like some next town over, you know, because I whatever. And so they give you this blood work. And, you know, it's funny how it fluctuates. But, you know, like back then, I don't know if I was eating a lot of ice cream, but my glucose was up. And then most recently, now my glucose is down. And my chloride was like, you know, within range, but one below. And now my chloride was like one above what would be considered normal. So it was get flagged a high. But, you know, there was all this other stuff that when they took a CT scan of my head, you know, and this stuff about there are scattered hypodensities within the white matter. That's a good one. How about the 5 millimeter osteoid osteoma somewhere in my paranasal sinuses? Yeah, no wonder I get these pains in my head. Basically, that's another word for a tumor. Of course, nobody bothered to call me or tell me about that. And then I look at some of my older blood things, like another CT scan from before. I was looking at, just out of curiosity, one of the body, the thorax. You know, because one of the things they thought I might be having some kind of bladder problem, or not bladder, but gallbladder. And then there's some calcification in the artery, you know, heart area or something, but not, you know, there's still a flow. So, you know, this is the continuation of yesterday's show. And for those who are interested in this, and we'll get into other things too, you know, I've got, you know, I'll talk about some other stuff. I got the music, a music feature, and the news, and photo of the day, and all that stuff. But I just wanted to kick this thing off with this, and then maybe we'll get back into it. Maybe we won't. But the medical industry, you know, I think the operative word there is industry. Like I was talking yesterday, you know, is a far cry from the days of doctors, you know, coming to your house with the doctor's bag, making a house call. But, you know, they're so busy, and, you know, they do these 15-minute, it's like a 15-minute appointment, right? It's the way it pretty much works. And, you know, a doctor will have, you know, a dozen rooms, say, in an average, in a decent sized place. And they may only have 1 or 2 doctors on duty, in some cases 1. And so you get these appointments and you sit in that room for sometimes a half hour, and then they come in and you've got your 15 minutes and they try to do whatever they do. Yesterday I had some blood work taken to check my liver enzymes and stuff. Unfortunately, the people that I go to, it gets posted on a website that I could access, and they've been very good about taking it down to the lab, and it was posted by the end of the day yesterday. So I had it 9 o'clock in the morning, and by like 3 in the afternoon, I saw my results, which of course were different than the results in the summer and stuff like that. There's certain things that are, stay the same. But I had this weird fluctuation at one point, and that was during the summertime. And this idea of, so what are you supposed to eat? And, the first they tell you this, then they tell you that. And it's, and it's really true. And it's not just, it goes beyond this thing that's been lasting for a couple of years now, 2.5 years since, according to, like I say, what I've seen, the former CIA director and director of intelligence say on a Sky News interview, that they have they have evidence that the communist Chinese were aware of this 2.5 years ago. And sometimes I say these things, like if you watch yesterday's show, or if because you watch this show, you watch yesterday's show, when I was getting in a population of the U.S., I said like there was 30,000 and then 100,000 people in the turn of the century, and I meant millions. Later on I corrected it by saying millions, but some people might have not realized that by saying millions, correcting myself from saying 330,000, I mean millions, that was supposed to be blanket to go backwards. And I tried to go through YouTube Studio because I wanted to put see, the problem with the live broadcast, this is live, which is crazy because it's 4:34 a.m. The problem with the live broadcast is I could, all this stuff you see, I have total control of while I'm doing it. But the only thing you can do after the fact is like trim the thing, or like maybe deal with add subtitles or stuff like that. You can't, I wanted to have something added that I could pop up when I said thousands. I wanted to say millions. I meant millions. And you see people do that, but those are people who aren't doing live videos. That's like someone that records themselves and then after the fact realize they did a screw up, and when they're editing it, they could put it in. But there's no way I can add it unless I would have downloaded the video, which would have, these things are like a gig or two, and that would have taken, and despite your internet, it has nothing to do with your internet speed. It has to do with their server, how things are choked by either your ISP or on the YouTube side. And it could take an hour or two. So the process of like edit, if you want to do a simple edit, you'd have to download your video. It could take an hour or two. Make the quick fix, which would probably only take you 10 minutes. And then upload it, which could take you like 2 hours. So, you're talking, anywhere from 2 or 3 hours to 4 or 5 hours. It's crazy. So anyway, just to correct that, yesterday I meant millions. There were like 30 to 40 million people in the U.S. during the Civil War, and 100 million people in the U.S. at the early part of the 20th century. In the 70s, there were about 200 million. And of course now, according to the early release census numbers, they're releasing them out like piecemeal. They're saying 326 million, but estimates by most people are that it's far above that because they did not do a door-to-door because of the thing last year. And a lot of people just did this online. And people, there's literally tens of millions, at least 10 million, but there's probably tens of millions of people who are basically just hidden, I mean, 6 months ago, they said there were like 1 million people had crossed the border, down the southern border. So, and they're expecting that maybe this year it might be 2 million people are coming in. So just think of that. And think of it over the years, I've said this once before, like for many decades, people get like locked into like something, especially news people, because they don't really do their due diligence or check. Like there's no fact checking or vetting or anything like that. So for years, everyone was talking about there were like 12 million undocumented or illegal, whatever. And the number was always used when anyone spoke about it, but they were using it in the year 2000, and they were using it in the year 2010, and then they were using it in the year 2000 or 2020. And you're going like, you think over 20 years, that number might have jumped to 20 million or 30. So it's like the population. I said this once before. I was like the first guy to say that the planet had hit 7 billion people, because everybody would always talk about population, even on like PBS and stuff, and they would say there's 6 billion people on the planet. And I'm going, no, man, there are 7 billion. Now this is 20 years ago. Now we're approaching 8 billion, well over 7.5 billion, probably 8 billion people on the planet right now. Again, they just make estimates, because you don't have the kind of census reporting, in parts of Southeast Asia, Africa, and even South American countries, what they call certain third world countries. People have no idea. And, it tends to be higher populations, higher birth rates in those areas. And that's, that's just a fact. That's just the way it is. So, but anyway, what I wanted to get into is that, in the medical profession is full of it, the health industry, the medical profession, whatever you want to call it, is full of contradictions. There are too many specialists, right? And if you are someone, you could spend, you reach a certain age, or if you have a certain, you get a blood test or something, and certain things look a certain way, or you get a CT scan and there's something like this. And so they want to send you to, and rightfully so, but what I'm getting at is they want to send you to somebody who specializes in that. And of course, the specialists are the ones that make the millions and millions. The family doctors, so to speak, which were hardly really family doctors anymore in most parts of the country. And some there still are. But, the assembly line doctors, they don't have the time to get into it and really look at something. They'll do the tests and they'll listen to you, but it's like you have to spearhead it. You have to say everything. That's why you should always be honest as possible when you see your doctor. Some people lie to their doctors, or they're afraid to tell their doctor they had this pain here or this, that, there, right? Or they don't seek medical help when there's something going on. And that's, and that's sad, because that could really cause complications. You should always seek medical help if you have a medical problem. But then it gets into diet. So if you have so you have various different organs, or a potential problem in a certain area. And, without getting into all kinds of specific stuff, it's like, one will tell you to eat a high fiber diet, nuts, things like nuts and, poultry and, things like that. Okay. And then another one will tell you, eggs are considered poultry, I think. I don't know. But another one will tell you don't eat poultry, right? Avoid nuts can cause, some kind of, complication with a certain organ. And I'm just giving those as like just two examples right off the top. So what's healthy, for one organ or one part of the body is unhealthy for another. And we went through this whole thing when I was trying to figure out the antibiotic thing. And my doctor yesterday did confirm that amoxicillin you can eat you can eat any foods with it. But the idea was like fingers crossed on whether or not I can make it, that if it indeed kills the, this is all about, the issue of, let's just get this out of here. The tooth. So, whether or not I can make it, that will last long enough to hold back any, continued, any recurrence of the infection, or whether or not this will totally have killed off any infection, until I guess it's, let's see, 1, 2, 3. So look this way. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Almost 4, almost a month. Just under a month till I have the oral surgery to get rid of that tooth. Which goes into the sinus, and I apparently have some other additional problems up in that area. So she was like, it could, or they might put you on a milder dose to see you through. And of course, any antibiotic, no matter what it is, destroys your microbiome, which is basically your, a healthy microbiome is how leads to a healthy body. And that's, it's how things are absorbed into. So it's almost like, if you are on antibiotics for like 2 months or something, I mean, if you have literally no bacteria, no microbiome, what you're eating, you're just a machine. You're just taking in food and, excreting it. Sorry to make it sound that, but I mean, nothing's going to stay in you. Because there's nothing there to process and absorb it and do all that stuff. I mean, you might get some minor, but I mean, it's just not, you're not going to be healthy. You're going to have a weak immune system and all that stuff. So, the solution to that is, well, I guess I'll wing it. Right? Hope for the best. I take these things for just like one more day. Who knows? And that's the least of my worries. And like I say, I've got people telling me like, hey, I need, do this, do this, do this, do that. And I'm like, you understand, man, I'm emptying buckets trying to clean the roof, trying to keep bugs out of my frickin' kitchen. My house is freezing. I'm waiting for them to come back and fix the burners in the furnace. I've got it, I'm on, I had some attack the other night, I had to take some kind of weird pill. I was just at the doctor's. I got blood work. I've got this oral surgery scheduled. I got to hope that they do that. and I don't have to get more major x-rays and more radiation because there already seems to be some kind of tumor in because of like it's over radiation stuff. Well, you could still work. No, man. I could barely make it through the day these days. And the only reason I'm up at 4:46 a.m. is because I'm up. You know, because by 6 or 7 o'clock at night, I fall asleep. I'm tired. You know. So, you know, and so what do? You know, well, you can't be depressed about it. You know, it's easy to be depressed. So you go to the store, go to the grocery store. Well, I have to go pick up a prescription today at like 9, 5 hours from now. I don't think they open until after 9. Hopefully it'll be ready. And then when I'm down there, I'm going to get a series of things that I think are health neutral, but I mean positively good for your health, but like kind of neutral in the sense that they're not good for one thing and bad for another. And that's the problem. So when you're dealing with things like, you know, like I'll give you an example. And remember, I'm not a health professional. I'm talking about this is my personal vlog.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
And so, you know, I'm just telling you my story. Now, that's what a vlog is, right? My experience. And, and just, if you have similar experiences, it's like, I don't see people do this. This is a unique show. And that's why I continue to do this, because in perpetuity, assuming these things survive, and I have like hundreds of these up here, like 300, 400, 500, I don't know how many. But that, I wish I could sit down and watch someone talk to me for about an hour or two about these things, because to see their perspective, what they went through or what they're going through, and, to kind of shed some light and maybe feel at least, okay, I'm not the only one that, is going through this, or, maybe I'll do some research, or I'll ask my doctor about, something that I heard or something like that, which you should always do. That's what I'm saying. You got to talk to your doctor, because they are too busy seeing a lot of people every 15 minutes, as many days of the week as they work. And so you're not on their mind, except when they open your chart, your file, that when you show up for that appointment and look at it. And then it's like, it's just the same as any of us. It's like when I do these shows that, whatever topic I talk about, and I talk about, anybody who's watched these, hundreds of shows knows the topics are so varied. And sometimes I'll have like a brain freeze. I don't know if it's because of a tumor or whatever, that white matter, whatever's going on in the freaking brain. But the idea is, I have to, you pause and you've got to like think a second. Recall. Okay, now I'm talking about music. Now I'm talking about, pop culture. Now I'm talking about the sun. Now I'm talking about astrophysics, or, you're switching. Now I'm talking about medical matters. You can't just jump back and forth. And then sometimes I'm looking for something, like, where's that thing? And then the next day I find it and I show it to you. Well, that's kind of how, it's no different for a doctor. Like, they're dealing with a bunch of different assorted people coming in, hundreds of people. And so they have to open that file, and then they're switching. So the last person they saw might have had rheumatoid arthritis. Another person might have the gout, And then they're coming into you and you're talking about a gallbladder or a heart issue or or whatever, or a brain tumor. You know what I mean? So they have to they're shifting gears like every 15 minutes. And so they're looking in the paper, So you have to be straightforward with them and direct them to certain things. Like I had to ask my doctors, because I had went to this particular other hospital, which isn't in the system, so I don't have access to this data. I had to specifically request, and I was smart enough to do this a couple of weeks ago. I called the nurses there, and I said, could you call this particular hospital that I went to and have them send copies of this, of these reports to my doctor. And then I said, and then I would like to have copies of that, since I don't have a copy of that on my online, access, because they're out of the system. And they did it. And it was yesterday, that was the topic, because there was some interesting stuff in there, because it was the first I had seen these things about, hypodensities likely representing small vessel white matter, ischemic change, soft tissue lesions on the scalp, and with sebaceous cyst being most common, osteoid osteoma on the right mastoid. What the heck is that? And I wanted to know that. I wish I would have known that beforehand, so I could have said, hey, So, and they just scanned this thing, and this is just, there were 4 pages that they shipped over, and and the doctor, I don't think she wasn't sitting there and she didn't read all 4 pages. She had just gotten that file, because the nurses passed it to her. And so I had questions, and I had a list. Like I say, I always take lists, make lists for everything, whether it's you're going to the shopping, right? Excuse me, or to-do lists, or whatever it might be, because you don't want to forget important things, or to ask the right question or to buy the right thing. But, back to this title card, and what are you supposed to eat? And they tell you this, and then they tell you that. It's like, yeah, it's real difficult. And, it's funny, for this one thing, I went through something, particularly the gallbladder. And this show is a show not about gallbladder, so don't turn off. I'm just going to talk about this because this is an example. Because I got some interesting, we'll get into some interesting stuff as the show progresses. It's early. So you should see what's on that list. 15 foods to avoid, if you've got gallbladder problems, right, or whatever. And it's basically America's 15 favorite foods. Not necessarily mine. But I'm serious. It's basically Americans' favorite 15 foods. And things that even someone like me, there's a couple of things on that list that I like. And so, it's crazy. You can't, it's like I think I had a title card before. You can't win for losing. You know what I mean? Or you can't lose for winning. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's all jumbled up. I'm wheezing, coughing. But, I don't have the thing, and I've been, tested for the thing, and I come up negative, and I'm around people, and I did the old deep breaths yesterday, and my lungs seemed clear, and my blood pressure and heart rate yesterday was fine. This morning, my heart rate was like 119 when I took it here. I could feel it, like boom, 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 boom. I don't know why. I have no reason to be. But maybe it's just all this stuff. Maybe it's reading that email from my relative, right? Who's like, you must do this. You must do that. Like, didn't read my thing saying, I'm facing potentially a couple of operations over the next couple of months. Not to mention, I'm living alone in a house with issues that are problems, and I've got mold issues in my bedroom. Luckily, I got the dehumidifier, the humidity in my bedroom down to 40. And as far as I know, mold can't grow at 40. Now, I don't want to say that. Let's double check that, because I don't like to ever say anything that I haven't double checked. Humidity where mold grows. Well, that's what came up. What humidity grows mold? Does mold... Moisture promotes humidity, while the Environmental Protection Agency maintains indoor humidity between 35 and 60%. Submolds begin to grow in 24 hours at a relative humidity of 55%. Will mold grow in 35% humidity? If outside temperature is 20 to 40 degrees, humidity inside should not be more than 40%. If outside. See, they don't answer. See, this is the thing. At what humidity does mold stop growing? Okay. Ideally, basement humidity level to prevent mold growth is between 30 and 50. So 40 would be, see, somewhere along the line I heard 40. So between 30 and 50 would be 40. Hey, Trey, I just happened to notice that you were there. I'm not looking at the chat now, but I did look at it for a second ago. So, so like I say, this relative of mine was good, who's always been good to me and stuff like that, has, just doesn't understand this problem. So, my humidity in my bedroom right now is that this morning was 40%. So, I know that in the ceiling where I had some water had come in and was, because the room had smelled musty last week. And, and it also has a door leading to the attic. So it's like that double, whammy, like, whatever could come down from the attic, into my bedroom, and it's a small quarters. So I may do it today if I feel up to it, but I probably, if not, I'll do it tomorrow. I'm going to do it one of these days while the temperature is so cold outside that the heat's on high enough and that the humidity is like at around 40, where there's no mold growth and everything's dried out. Because I have some of this kills. And what I'll probably get today, and I need to write it down, is mold killer. They have these sprays and different things that kill mold. And I have some plastic on my roof, and I've got to, deal with that. I have to take that plastic off or treat it with a mold killer. And then underneath that, I have to paint this kills once I get all the mold off, which is dead or should be gone, but I don't want it growing back. Then I got to cover this with this like kills stuff. And, because I've already stopped a leak above it. So this is residual. But it's still a safety net because I never know with this roof that, some new thing could happen, And while I'm fixing a roof from the inside isn't the answer. And there are some spots on that roof from the inside in the attic that I could feel the boards are kind of like, they're at the point where I could like be Superman and punch my fist literally through the roof. There's not many, but there's one or two that where I did such a strong patch job, but the water still like must have pooled there or something. It can't get in, you know, see, because you've got shingles and the wind's blowing them, and some of them are like still stuck partway there, and so water comes in, and that's how the leaks were starting in the first place, because the angle. Let me get rid of this food thing for a second so I could gesticulate properly. See, the roof is like, the top part of the roof is like that, but the side of the attic is like this, which is ideal because, you know, everything just runs right down. In fact, snow can't even stick to that. It's the top of the attic could get some snow. It's a Dutch colonial, which has like, it's almost like, like I said, like almost like slightly like an Oriental design if you think about it, you know, like a pagoda type of thing almost. But it's like this and then this. So that's the roof. But along this part here, you know, that were the shingles, and some shingles that had fallen off or been blown off. Some got wedged and they're there, and there's no way up and there's no way access to that. You know, it's like almost 4 stories up. And so some water, I think, can pool in certain areas until a strong wind comes along. In fact, I've had that happen. I had a leak in the front area, and we had one of these days where we were getting, because, you know, that's one thing this country has to come to grips with, gusts of wind. We've been getting like in the midsection and in the Northeast, and I guess up in the Great Plains. Of course, it's always been windy in the Great Plains. But places like this never had like frequent 50-mile-an-hour gusts, 50 and 60-mile-an-hour gusts. I mean, 45, when I lived in the Gulf Coast of Florida, 45 is the beginning of a tropical storm. And we've already had like some storms come in where sustained winds were in the high 30s. We're approaching a tropical storm. And the gusts were, you know, 50 to 60. And that's really what happened to my roof, because the one side of my roof, which was more recently built, which should have held for another 5 years minimum, 10 maybe even, because it was fixed not too long before I bought the house. A lot of roofs should last, you know, 15 to 20 years if they're done properly. Those gusts at the edge, I guess the gust had gotten up and pulled off like two shingles, whatever. And these weren't like smaller ones, like the normal size. They were like, this is a 27-inch monitor. They were about the width of this monitor, 27-inch, 2 of them. And that was that's my worst leak, right? I don't want to get too far off into the roof thing. But I mean, this has to do with health and eating and stuff, though, too. So, and talking about how people don't understand, you know, when you're trying to deal with this stuff. It's like, you know, not only do I got to deal with health issues, you know, dietary issues, but, you know, at the same time, I'm dealing with, you know, you can't be breathing mold, right? And so I have to repair this. This is my bedroom. This is the room I spend, you know, most of my day, better part of my day. I mean, I sleep there, and whether I sleep for a full 8 hours, which I don't, but at least I try to stay in bed, or I have my chair and my big screen TV in that room, because it's the warmest room in the house, and it's, you know, and I've got it set up that way. So I could go up there in the afternoon. So yeah, I spend the better part of my day when I'm not outside. In the summertime, I'm outside. I spend a lot of time outdoors. And I do try to walk every other day at least, get outside in fresh air. Today I'm going to walk. But I've got to fix this. I got to demold that roof ceiling, which means I got to put like some kind of tarp down because it's over my bed and nightstand. It's in the worst possible place. If it was in the center of the room or around a side or something, you know, no big deal. but it's like, and then trying to, standing on my bed, and I have my bed like kind of nailed to screwed to the floor, because I took a full size bed and turned it into like almost a queen size bed. By just creativity. I added a 4x4 on the far side that was level with, so I could move the mattress over, and then against the wall where the bed was, I put pillows. Then I covered a bunch of pillows along that to create a second, like to extend the mattress the width of a pillow, because I neither sleep against the wall nor against the other side. But think about a queen size bed or whatever. You sleep pretty much mostly in the middle area. You're not sleeping at the end, right off the edge. Even if you were sleeping with a person, you're not like right on the edge of either side. You're both even somewhat would be in the middle, center portions with about, this much a pillow space almost, to the end. It's just the thing I did. It was inexpensive. I got Walmart pillows for like $2 each. I did this a couple of years ago. But in order to make it all work, right, without having to, like I say, I do everything on a budget. This is an idea. I got some L brackets and I screwed this strong wooden bed to the floor. So I'm not about to try to even undo that. So I have to put down a tarp, but it's a bounce. So I've now, it's not the firmest mattress in the world, but it's not firm. So I have like a little mini platform I can use. I can squeeze in between the nightstand and to the edge of the bed, but I'm going to have 1 foot on the bed, maybe 2 foot at one point, in order to deal with this ceiling thing. And that's just the kind of stuff I go through on a daily basis, and I still haven't, it's going to take me a week or so to clean my yard, get that ready for the winter, maybe longer, and like I said, I've got some furnace things. I'm waiting for this furnace guy to come back with some parts, and I've got some bugs problems that I'm dealing with that I have to keep on top of. And so people say, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this, you got to do that. Go on top of that, I've got to take care, I got to take care of this entire place myself, right? I got to clean up. I got, dust. I have a cat. But anyway, back to this food thing. I'm pouring my coffee here. I'll let it get warm. So for gallbladders, and you could do this research yourself. Like I say, I'm not giving you any advice. I'm just telling you, what I've looked at. If you look at, and there's always the internet's useless for, for anything, really, I mean, like I said, with the amoxicillin antibiotic thing, it took me, I don't know, and those who've come along for the ride on that, it was like literally over a dozen doctors, and I don't know how many videos I watched of doctors, literally doctors, till I finally found, and then yesterday going to my doctor, getting that final confirmation that amoxicillin, you can eat anything with amoxicillin, because amoxicillin is a targeted, is targeted at like staphylococcus and, the type of thing that, your tooth, the tooth infection is. Now it's not, and because of that, it's not as strong an antibiotic. So, you could eat yogurt with it. You could keep eating foods that will feed your microbiome. Which seems counterintuitive. You're still killing off good bacteria. There's no doubt about it. But it's more targeted. Whereas opposed to if you're taking like penicillin or you're taking some of these other stronger antibiotics, it's killing everything. And if you take dairy with it, or you take high fiber and stuff like that, according to these things, you're gonna lessen the efficacy of the antibiotic, right? So that's just some weird thing, and it doesn't sound, like I said, it sounds counterintuitive and doesn't sound right. But I've now had 3 professional doctors state this, that amoxicillin you could eat even dairy with it, and it doesn't affect it, because somehow it's targeted. Don't ask me why, because I'm not a medical professional, right? And I was, she said it twice to me yesterday. I said, even yogurt, even plain, yogurt. She said, yes, you can eat yogurt. And she took a blood test, and I got my results back at the end of the day, like I said, and, my levels of various things. So, we're fairly good in most instances, except for a few exceptions. But, so I got to keep an eye on this gallbladder. I got to keep an eye on my heart, and I got this sinus thing going on, some kind of like ostoma, whatever. It's another word for a tumor. But the idea is that if you go and look and say you're worried about your gallbladder, and I know from a previous CT scan, I know my gallbladder has like stuff in it, but it wasn't obstructed when they took the CT scan this past summer, right? So they didn't feel like they had to take it out then, right? Because people get their gallbladders taken out. And it's not as bad as operation as it was years ago, it's still major surgery and stuff like that, and then it does affect anytime you take an organ out, it affects your body, and there's life changes. But it's it's not the end of the world, put it that way. Even the prostate thing, I have I had prostate cancer, and I had prostate taken out, so I don't have prostate. It affects your life, and you have to make life adjustments, but you can adjust to it, and your body can adjust. You have to, it's weird. Maybe I'm not going to talk about that, because it's more about what are you supposed to eat. In the prostate situation, you don't really have to eat anything. Just drink a lot. It's like most things will tell you, even with the gallbladder thing, is drink a lot of liquids, drink a lot of water, right? Keep flushing your system. Same with the kidney stuff. But, in some instances, so my chloride was high and things like that. And, it says, reduce your salt intake. So like gargling with salt, and that salt gets into your teeth and mouth and gums and gets into your body. So I was doing that. My blood test yesterday showed that because I don't put salt on food normally and stuff like that. So there's no way in hell I should have had like high rate. So I figure this salt water gargling and stuff did it. So it's like I'm saying, what are you supposed to do? First they tell you this, then they tell you that. So the doctor goes, well, yeah, you've got to watch your salt intake right now. And yeah, you could get and even gargling with salt, even if you rinse it all out, you're still, that's going right in your body. Through your gums, it's going it's getting into your body. A portion of it's getting into your body. And so you can't, so you don't want to have salt, too much salt. But you should see the 15 things that like you're not supposed to eat with a gallbladder. It's like, forget it. No, and it's like some of the stuff's junk food. There's no doubt about it, and processed food and things like that. But I'm not a big eater of that stuff. But, even occasionally, what I'm trying to say is that it's the opposite. You'll find that, what's good for this organ or not good for this organ is good for this other organ. It's the same with antibiotics. It's like, in general, speaking of those, I mean, the microbiome, is like key to your health. But then an antibiotic is the only thing that's going to kill off some certain thing. It's screwed up. So, you can't win for losing is what is the conclusion. So what are you supposed to eat? And the answer is, my conclusion is, and like I say, first of all, everybody's got to talk. You got to talk to your doctors or nutritionists when you're having any kind of issues, because, you got to get like second and third opinions and from professional people on this stuff. But it's like my personal take on this, and I was like, in the summertime, I'm at my most healthiest. I'm out in the sun, I'm getting that vitamin D direct from the sun. I'm outside breathing fresh air amidst all my plants and greenery. So the air is clean. It's fresh oxygen. It's not like I'm getting pollution from the street, and cars and all that stuff. And yet I had 2 visits to the emergency room. I didn't even realize that till I looked at the date on these. So I got copies of these papers, from this. Because I was thinking it was like September and October or something, and then realizing this was like July and August is when I was doing that. I'm going, man, I was my most healthiest. Suntanned, right? Vitamin D, eating fresh vegetables from my garden, fresh food every day. I mean, I wasn't even going to the grocery store. In fact, the only thing I was really getting at the grocery store was like olive oil. And because I wasn't buying anything else, I was getting the best, make sure it was pure, first cold pressed, olive oil from Italy, watch that Tunisia stuff. So I was getting the finest, condiment type of things or whatever, dressings to go along with my eating my fresh vegetables from my garden. And I still was like stricken down twice, So that's like a continuation of my yesterday's show. Is like, it's just, it's weird. It's the luck of the draw sometimes. So my idea is, my take on it is that, try to eat as healthy as you can at certain points, but you got to have a mind about it. Your mind consciousness type of idea, where you got to think positive, and you also have to have a good quality of life so that you're feeling good and you're happy. So if ice cream, or some kind of dairy makes you happy, don't like say, I'm never going to be able to eat ice cream again. That's my thing. That's my thought. Like I say, maybe you shouldn't. Don't take my word for it. But from my standpoint, it's like, well, I've got ice cream in the freezer right now. I'm not going to take any this week. I'm going to take anything until I get this tooth dealt with. I don't want any sugars getting into my, I want to try to make sure I get this abscess or whatever the heck's going on there is totally done. I take these pills for like another day and a half, the amoxicillin, and then I'm done with them. And I have to hope that killed anything that was up there, because I don't have the oral surgery till December 1st. And my doctor was uncommittal on whether or not she thought. She said, well, is it good? It could come back or not. Right. I said, well, as a clinician, what do you think? She goes, well, you probably will make it, but she said, you'll probably be okay. Right. If you, don't, encourage the growth of that kind of bad bacteria or whatever. So I mean, garlic is, so I'll be, but I always eat garlic, like I showed it yesterday, you know what I mean? Like this is There, that's fresh chopped garlic and broccoli, on top of a soup that's pressed down and eaten raw. Most people would be like, couldn't stand that, right? But no, garlic and me, we're friends. I've got garlic cloves. I eat garlic every day. I eat fresh chopped garlic. I also eat minced garlic as a seasoning, garlic powder as a seasoning. But though garlic powder is really just giving you iron. I've done the research on garlic. Garlic powder and some of the minced things and things like that, or like when you roast garlic and stuff like that, you're not getting that allicin out of it. You're getting a very minor amount of that, because the purpose of that what the healing part of garlic is that it's trying to heal itself. And so when you cut a clove of garlic, when you flatten a clove of garlic and cut it, it releases that like sulfury type of stuff, the stuff that actually kind of if it's fresh garlic, it should burn your mouth almost. That's the garlic plant trying to heal itself. And that substance is the thing that's good for you. Some people say that's as good as an antibiotic. So, I've read that, but don't take my word for it again. I'm just saying, but I have been eating garlic, and I have been chewing garlic. See, this is the thing, and it's like, so sometimes you can't win for losing, and you don't know what to eat, and you could follow a regimen of everything that you think is right. But you could still, people still keel over. It sucks, really sucks. It's a crazy thing. So you just have to hope for the best, Pouring some more coffee. So yeah, you eat healthy, but also remember, keep a positive mind and have a good quality of life and be happy. It's like they say laughter. People who laugh a lot, they say laughing is a has curative properties. Just like REM sleep is very important. Not just sleep, getting rest, but like deep sleep is when you're, has those properties. So, yeah, that's that. So I don't know what to say. So that's my question of the day is I'm just saying, what are you supposed to eat? It's crazy. Nobody knows. And you can't trust the internet. And, like I say, unless you ask your doctor, and if you have to go, I was talking before about specialists. And so there's this idea that, okay, if you've got this, you got to go to this, urologist. You have to go to this oncologist. You have to go to this oral surgeon. You have to go to this electrocardiologist. You have to go to this, whatever. The same, you know what I mean? And so you could spend your time, just going to various specialists, and depending on your health care, right, and your availability, and people say, well, that's why I said the idea of working. It's like if you're constantly like either trying to take care of your own house, your own life, and you're dealing with issues, in that front, and then you're trying to deal with health issues, and you're every day or every week you're doing something, and somebody's saying, oh, do this, do that. It's like, you got any time, and then you're trying to decide on what diet is the exact diet. And then they're saying, well, get this exercise on top of this. And, it's like, yeah, your whole life becomes like, you no longer have a life, right? it's a sucky thing. So it's just a weird thing. Well, anyway, let's take a pause on that for a while, and let's just look at, we already looked at the weather. Let's just look at the news. There's some comical stuff here, and there's some serious stuff here. So, I always talk about Johnny Ive. He has this new company called Love From. He's the guy who designed all the he's the industrial designer that did all the cool Mac stuff, the iPhone, iPad, iPod, and all that stuff, iPhone. And he's got a new company now. And so it'd be interesting to see who hires, what his client list ends up being. And, what comes out of that. Because, between Johnny Ive and Steve Jobs, that was some of the most innovative, tech, industrial design. That was a good tech industrial design team. Whether or not these guys got along and all that kind of stuff, whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is, Ive's influence on Apple was, it's just, he was the designer. Then you see Facebook attempts to bypass Apple's App Store fee with new subscription payment link. Of course, Facebook is supposedly now Meta, so I'm not sure I understand that yet. So I'm not sure how they're doing that. If they're still going to call it Facebook and Meta is like a separate division. But whatever it may be, I've been following this whole metaverse thing very closely, and I think you should too, because that is the future of computing. That's AR, VR, AI, right? And then those are the three things you that are going to be, next year, within a year to 18 months, will be the three most important things in tech: AI, AR, VR. And the merging of all three is going to be transformational. And you throw Johnny Ive, if he gets into the picture, if Facebook could pull him in, if Meta would become a client of Johnny Ive's, we'd see that'd be a real coup against Apple, because there's a war going on between Facebook and Apple, or Meta and Apple. Now you got the story above that. Well, below it, voters cancel the war on police. We talked about that yesterday. Yeah, well, that's inevitable. I mean, that's common sense. People want safety first. Even the people who vocally are out there trying to say defund the police or something, when push comes to shove, they're the first. When somebody's not, breaking down their door, right? They're the first ones dialing the police. But going back up to the top, Bitcoin could hit 146,000 and is looking like digital gold. J.P. Morgan, Market Insider. Now, that's a very interesting thing, because people respond to this. This is why people buy. In other words, J.P. Morgan probably has a lot of Bitcoin. So they release, this is what these people do. They release something like this, so all these people who are on E-Trade on their computers, or all the home people, right, that they're going to buy or try to acquire as much Bitcoin as they can, which in effect shoots up the price. And so, yeah, I kick myself. Like I say, you could have bought Bitcoin for $100. And if you would have just spent $1,000, you could have been, already, I think you could have been a millionaire or something like that. Think of that. You could have borrowed that. You could have just used your credit card, and you'd been a millionaire now. But now it's at six. Today it was, I checked it earlier today. It was at 61. Yesterday it was 63. Some reason it went down, because this is 17 hours ago. And 17 hours ago, the Bitcoin price was 63,000. I know because I checked yesterday. I have no Bitcoin. I mean, I do have Bitcoin. I have like 0.00001 Bitcoin or something. It's worth like $6, right? But that's all I have, It's so high that it's worth $6. If it breaks that amount, it'll be worth like $12 or something, or $14. Yeah, $15. It's sad. Man, I should have just got some more. But it's like that train has left the station. You see? That train has left the station. And even if it would drop, it would only drop, I mean, Bitcoin is does do some dips, it's profit taking by people. But if it dips, even if it dipped to 20,000 per Bitcoin, who the fuck, you can afford, I don't have 20 grand to buy a Bitcoin. And yeah, even then it would be a good investment for these guys because, 20,000, that would be 7 times your money, your investment, right? Where are you gonna, get put in money, put in some money and get 7 times what you put in out, right? If it would go to 146. So, and of course, Max, Kaiser. Do you ever watch the Kaiser report? Of course, Max Kaiser, he has a lot of Bitcoin. I think he's had to have made mega millions on Bitcoin. And he's been promoting it for such a long time. He's got it, a lot of it. So, yeah, a guy like Kaiser, he's saying it'll go up to 1 million, but that's just Kaiser because he's doing what JP Morgan's doing. He's trying to get as many people believing in it so that the price will go up, because that's why people buy. That's how the markets work, And they give a press release comes out from some trader, group that has heavy in a certain thing. It's technically, I don't even think it's legal, in a certain way. Like you're supposed to acknowledge, and maybe they do in the story. Or in the press release, they have to acknowledge the fact that they have, they own the company when they do something like that. But yeah, wouldn't that be a trip? 146. Like I say, I know a couple of people who have a few Bitcoin, and if you just had, a handful, you'd be. And it shot up to that price, you'd be at like $3, $4, almost $500,000. Anyway, so that's something to watch. This Apple Meta / Facebook thing is another thing to watch. The AI, AR, VR, that is the future. The iPhone is not the future. The smartphone, Android phone, whatever. This is a year, 18 months from now. Those will be things for people that just, like I said yesterday, people who just don't let go of technology. There's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? It's like somebody who drives an old car and just keeps fixing it up. It's fine. People who have restore antiques. But I mean, that's where that's heading. There's no need for it. I've seen, like I say, I've really delved deep into this. And the billions and billions of dollars that Zuckerberg has been putting into the AR and VR and this whole metaverse is paying off. I mean, even the Ray-Ban glasses they have, which are, they're glorified. I mean, it's a camera, it's a radio, it's music, its voice. But he's everything I was saying, like when I first started talking about this, he was saying the same thing. So their teams are working on voice control, and that's what I'm trying to get at. So we'll come back to this in a second, but just for the sake of it, it's at once that these things, once these devices, the voice assistants, adopt AI, which they haven't, okay? Like I say, they're command and response, but they are pretty interesting what they're doing. But once they're going to adopt, they're going to be the poor man's Tesla robot, you see? Once they adopt AI, that's going to be another transformational thing for society. And, that's why Apple introduced their ones that look like citronella candles. They know it. And so they don't want to be held behind, because otherwise Amazon obviously is way in the lead in that. I'm not even sure you can purchase the citronella candle version. I mean, they literally copied it from Apple. I can open this and, look at this. Let's go to Apple. And find these things. There they are. All right, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to show you this page. I'm going to go to the capture and take you to this. And I know this looks weird for a second, but you can see it. Doesn't that look like a citronella candle, like one of those candles, bug candles you put in your backyard? But, isn't it, let me try to put both on the screen at the same time. Let me get rid of the news and put up the, this is the Echo Dot. So let me go back. Just slide this over. So on the right is Amazon's Echo Dot. And on the left is, Apple's. An intelligent assistant, control your smart home, work seamlessly with iPhone, private and secure. They charge $99. Amazon charges like $34 or $50, and you can get it in payments. Like I paid $6.99 a month because I don't have any, But how they get away with stealing that? I mean, that's like outright theft, right? Look at that. Isn't that crazy? So, it's really weird. But anyway, that is the future, and Apple is well aware of it. Let me go back to the news. And that's what Facebook, Meta, all these technologies are converging, and they're all going to converge within the next year to 18 months. So, that's what you should be focusing on. And all the smart people are focusing on that right now. And, I guess Bitcoin is here to stay, right? JP Morgan is like into Bitcoin. The government isn't going to go against JP Morgan. Bitcoin's here. For a while there, it was as if the government was going to we're going to crush this thing, right? But, they're not going to. Not with the likes of JP Morgan behind it. And then last, sun outburst goes cannibal as first new blob overtakes a slower one. So like I was trying to tell you, and that's enough of this news, that the sun has been pretty active this past week, and we've been getting hit with several CMEs. Now, none of these are like a Carrington event. You know, they're not going to take out any satellites. I mean, there's always a possibility that there might be some limited, you know, radio problems, maybe a satellite problem, maybe some kind of communications, maybe a transformer or a small grid thing. But none of these are the big Earth shattering extinction type thing. But they are things showing that we're moving into that area and that we should be aware of this. Right. And so before to get in last but not least, and then we'll get back into some other stuff we were talking about earlier. You know, yesterday I mentioned that, you know, speaking of the voice assistant, that I had requested this song. For some reason, this came to my mind. And I actually had this single, or it was in the house. I don't know. It was family members or it was mine. I don't know. But there was a song on there called You Know My Name, Look Up My Number. And it was the B-side, right? And I believe this was on the Let It Be. This was it was on the B-side of a song from the Let It Be album. That's when this thing came out. And, you know, I was thinking, you know, Let It Be was kind of a semi-live, like it was a semi-live out, about as live as the Beatles ever did. You know, I mean, apart from some bootleg thing that might exist, but I mean, if it did exist, it would be useless because when the Beatle performances, except for the early days, you know, this U.S. performances, a bunch of screaming girls, you couldn't hear it. They said that themselves they couldn't even hear themselves play or sing. But I mean, the Let It Be album wasn't such a bad album. You know, I mean, like I say, you know, people are into Beatles and Beatles, like fanatical, right? They were the first. That was just the crazy Beatlemania, right? They called it. You know, younger people don't know this. I mean, people 40 and 50 years don't understand what Beatlemania is. It's hard to believe, but 40 years ago, it was 1980. The Beatles had been broken up for almost, 10 years at that point. John Lennon died end of 81. We looked that up yesterday. So, I mean, people don't, So what I'm saying is that if the two albums that I found that out of the Beatles that were really good music, like some of the individual John Lennon albums, some of the individual, like I talked about yesterday, McCartney albums, that's what brought me to this song brought me to that yesterday's feature. And then the White Album, like if you listen to a couple of tracks on the White Album, and particularly like the guitar solo on the song called The End, right? That's like pretty wild. That's definitely wild. So if there were two Beatle records to own, I would say the White Album and Let It Be, And if you could get a copy of this, you can get your voice assistant, because mine played it for me. Listen to this song. It's really weird. It's different. It's bizarre. It's like this weird loungy thing, that they did in. Let's see if there's a date on here. Trying to look at the small print on the bottom. Capitol Records. Well, it was the Let It Be era, which would have been like the early 70s, like 71 or something like that, I guess. Let's see. We could ask that question or search for it. I'll let you know in a second. I'm wheezing. When was Let It Be released? Someone else, obviously. May 1970. Okay. So yeah, 1970. So that's 51 years ago. So if you were 50 years old, you weren't even born when this song came out. Right. And the Beatles had pretty much broken up. Like there was some weird thing with their last album. Like I think Let It Be came out, or the white one, or like an album. The last Beatle album that came out was actually recorded before the previous album, if you can follow that. In other words, they like held it back, or so the last album wasn't really their last album. Anyway, so that's just my I thought yesterday I wasn't going to do it since I briefly talked about this song. But then I thought, I wanted to show you, the reverse side. On the other side, the main side, you would have seen the full apple, and on the back side of their 45s, the apple was sliced. So this was the B side. And so this is the original. This is it. This is what the original thing looked like. So that's a collector's item, I'll tell you. But check it out if you want to. And if you don't know, if you're like 50 or younger and you really don't know, you just heard of this band, the Beatles, my recommendation is Let It Be and the White Album are worth discovering. And some of the songs on there you might not, are just weird and might seem really strange. So just fast forward to them, just like skip them until you get to something you like. That was the era of the album, especially like the White Album. I mean, there's, music reviewers made a big stink about Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album by the Beatles. Like that was some major thing. Excuse me. I never really thought that was that great of an album. That's me personally. But a lot of bands, the White Album was an influence on a lot of other artists to produce albums, and Let It Be, was at that session, they went on the roof. You may have seen the video of that. You could find this stuff on YouTube now because it's been so long that this stuff's available. And you can watch the performance of a couple of the songs from Let It Be on a roof of the recording studio over in England. The Beatles actually on there. And you could see like Yoko sitting in a corner and, George Martin over by the door and stuff. It's pretty an interesting glimpse into history and stuff. But yeah, that's the featured music, musicians, album, record, literally a record of the day. Check it out. But back to this thing, which is the title card and why many people will have come to see this later. I mean, very few people. It's 5:49 a.m., so it's like there aren't that many people up, at least in the former United States. Yeah, so when you go through these various health diets, and I don't mean healthy diets, I mean medical diets to help you fight off a disease or something that's to prevent a problem with a particular organ, these kinds of things, heart health, clogged arteries, potential for having clogged arteries, all this kind of stuff, even things with your colon and kidneys, bladder, all kinds of stuff. Like I say, it's what are you supposed to really eat? Because the human body's so diverse, these organs, that one thing requires, might want potassium, right? Magnesium, chloride or whatever. And, something else might say you got too much chloride. And like I was given an example. A dentist will, some people will tell you, gargle with salt, instead of mouthwash. But it's like I was gargling with salt, and I just had a blood test, and my chloride level was up, and reasons were one of the main primary reasons was like, too much salt or something. It's like I don't put salt on food, but I recently have been doing this salt gargle. So I don't know what to say. It's real puzzling. And if you look at particularly things like this gallbladder stuff, the 15 foods you should avoid. It's like, no wonder people have gallbladder operations and have problems. And this goes back to the FDA, and this whole way that, I like how they can tell you, in one regard, they could be in charge of America's health, right? You must do this, take this, get this, do that. Don't do this, don't do that. But in other ways, they approve all of these things and say, go ahead, And it all boils down to, like I say, what this show is really all about. It's the corporatocracy, right?
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
I mean, the idea that lobbyists, big tech and the corporatocracy, big pharma, big ag, big media, military contractors, right? The bankers and the financial institutions like JP Morgan and the Fed, right? Well, and all this big tech stuff, if I didn't mention that before. They have such a stranglehold on, on how this country's run, and all these various agencies and all these lawmakers, in quotation marks, that they only do what's they force these people to pass laws or to enforce laws or to put, or to make pronouncements and decrees and all kinds of crazy stuff based on things that will make their company more profitable. And it's all contradictory. That's what I'm trying to get at. And, there are lawsuits out there all the time because you see them on TV, and I talk about them at least every other show. If you've taken such and such a thing, contact a law firm of whatever, and you're eligible for financial remuneration or something. But it's like, yeah, but that was originally approved by the FDA, whatever that drug is that you're seeing some law firm ad on TV telling you that, there's a settlement available and, you could be part of that, or some class action lawsuit or something. So, they have no credibility. And when you look and you talk to a doctor or a nutritionist, or you have a problem with a particular organ or something in your body, health issue, and they tell you what not to eat, it's all the things that are advertised on TV, which are obviously approved by the FDA and that have some kind of lobby power and invest in, political campaigns and in Congress and presidential races and all that stuff. Support local politicians and judges and all that stuff. So, yeah, what are you supposed to eat? They tell you this, they tell you that. But the idea is, you don't know what to believe. And even when you have an issue, like I say, most doctors aren't trained nutritionists. And then if you go to a nutritionist, they're not necessary, unless they are also a doctor, a medical doctor, you have to like then go to your doctor and say, I went to a nutritionist and they told me, to take such and such is, you have to consult your doctor then to see if is that okay? And your doctor might say, well, I don't specialize in that. So you need to go to a specialist. You need to go to a cardiologist, a oncologist, a urologist, a neurologist. You see what I mean? Some specialist. And so you're running, your head's spinning around like it's in a blender. And you're running around all over the place trying to figure out, what to do. And, you don't get a straight answer because one tells you this, one tells you that. And yet all these things are being advertised every day on cable TV, network TV, and through the internet, and, and all that. So what is it? I mean, if you got a gallbladder problem, you're not supposed to eat pizza, right? You're not supposed to eat chicken. You're not supposed to eat ice cream. You're not supposed to, and those are just some of the things that people say, well, yeah, you shouldn't really but I mean, I just went through a list of 15 things I before the show, and I'm not going to mention them all because that's another thing about the internet, just a little pet peeve here, is those things where it's like next. So, because they want you to look at ads. So it's like they show you one thing and then you got to hit next and then another page opens. So takes you, you got to go through 15 pages to find the 15 things. Here's the cat tail. Well, you missed it, but that's why everything's shaking. How you doing, kitty? Did you get tired of being upstairs by yourself? I might be painting that room today. Ceiling. I don't know, but I think I should. I got to deal with this mold issue while the humidity is 40%. Because I know the mold is dead and I can just scrub that off there. 9 o'clock, I got to go take a walk. And I guess as this, at the end of this show, I'll watch this show back. My cat is prowling back and forth. That's why you're hearing all this shaking. Do whatever you got to do. You coming back over? Okay. Let's hold you up. See, you can't see the cat. Hold on. Let's see. Let me see if I can do this. Well, watch the tail. Did you see the tail? No. I don't know how that happens. Why you can't see that. Anyway. I should have gotten rid of this and then you would have seen it maybe. I don't know. So I guess the answer to this question is there is no answer. Right? And there's not likely to be an answer. And the best thing it's almost like you just have to hope for the best in life. And as you get older, some people can survive, eating, things. I told the story a long time ago once I was in the hospital, because I was in the hospital a couple of times, more than a couple of times. And a guy, some very old man, must have been 80 something, is in a bed next to me. It was a heart ward. And his wife was there and he was being released. There goes the cat again. Just like stay in one place. Did you see the tail? And so they were sitting there. Here he comes again. What are you doing? You had breakfast. You got food in your bowl. Relax. Let me finish this show. So the wife or the guy, I forget which one said it, I'm hungry. I think he said, let's get something to eat before we go home. And he or she, whichever one it was, said, we'll stop off at McDonald's on the way home. Now, here was a guy who was 80-some. He was in because he was having some heart problems. But obviously, he was a patient. The nurses seemed to have known him. He made it to 80. He was an old man. I don't know if the 80 was it, but, he could have been older than that. This guy looked really old. His wife was there. She looked really old. And so despite the fact that I guess this guy occasionally comes in and, has an IV thrown in him or something like that, or gets checked out, he's eating at McDonald's, junk food, burger like that on the screen. So some people, like I said the other day, some people drink scotch and smoke cigarettes into their 90s. Another person smokes and drinks and they keel over it in their 40s or 50s, right? It's weird. And I've had my share of problems. I'm going through all these freaking things and I eat healthy. No, that's enough. Here, first of all, let's do this. Let's put you here. There we go. Okay, now that's that. Now, you got to be on TV, and that's enough, okay? You're stressing me out. I can't be stressed out. So, it's just the luck of the draw, right? You see these joggers, runners, healthy people, have problems. Like I said, it's a two, it's like there's two sides of everything, it's like, yeah, but I've seen these people, I've seen videos of people who are vegans and on these vegetarian diets and different things like that, who had complications, and then other people who swear it saved their lives and improved their lives. So, it's like, so what are you supposed to eat? I eat broccoli, garlic, use turmeric, grow a garden 6 months out of the year, eat fresh organic vegetables from my garden. And when I buy stuff, I buy fresh things. I use things like olive oil and, I'll occasionally will go with the salmon or something like that, but don't overdo it. Don't want to get too much mercury, but want to get the benefit of fatty fish, they say, is good for you. The right omega balance. So I try to do everything that's right. I don't lead a sedentary life, I'm not walking 10,000 steps, but I've walked the past 2 days. I've walked a couple miles each day, and I'll walk a couple miles today. So it's like breathing fresh, crisp air, the morning air, around 9 o'clock or so, a couple hours from now. I'll go out in the backyard and feed the birds before that, take some deep breaths of that cold morning air. And it is cold too. Like I said, it's 27 degrees outside my studio, if you want to call it that. 27. November 4th. Man, it's cold. That's cold, right? And I'm glad I rushed, because I had my hose out back, and I still wanted to cover my spigot, though I drained the water and turned off my hose from the inside and drained the pipe and put insulators over that. But I still wanted to cover the thing from the outside, and I didn't get a chance to do that because I don't want the pipes cracking and cold air kind of getting in there or something weird like that. So I don't know if it's too late to do that or not, because we've had freezes 2 nights in a row. but at least I took my hoses into the garage. You know, the garage will get cold and get down to close to freezing and stuff. But I mean, it's like, it's not like leaving it out to if it's 27 in November, that means I'm predicting that we're going to probably have some decent snow this year. And in January or February, we might be seeing those single digits, definitely the teens. It's going to be one of those years. Because, you know, with all this ash being shot up, you know, the volcano stuff, I don't know if I put that up, you know, put that over top of this for the time being. This is a fresh picture from the Spanish site of La Palma. They're ahead of us. So this is recent. This is like within hours, right? Or from, you know. And those jets are still coming up. I mean, this is crazy. I was going to bring the whole thing up, but it was just a repeat. I mean, this thing started around September 29th, and it's been nonstop. 26,000 houses destroyed and stuff. You know, so all that ash. And this isn't the only volcano. This is like the classic story. This is the one that all eyes are on, or should be. But you notice that on the news, you know, it's not mentioned here. They're talking about, it's interesting to see that at least space.com mentioned the solar outburst, right? But in general, when I was like, that's a screen capture that I just turned into a file, you know, there was, the volcano just wasn't on there. See, because that goes against their climate crisis idea, you know, because there are volcanoes going off on every continent, and that is like I'm going to repeat this every day. It's the same old thing. Like I say, the sun, you know, they're at least acknowledging the CMEs and the sun, the weird sun activity. They can't, you know, there has been some acknowledgement of the weakened magnetic field. Okay, and certainly it's been in the journals, the peer-reviewed journals. They've acknowledged the slowing down of the conveyor, the Atlantic conveyor. That's the thing that makes North America and Northern Europe and England and stuff warmer than it should be for its latitude. And, you know, and there's some papers that are starting to deal with the sun and this concept of novas besides supernovas, the idea that stars eject, you know, have these major ejections, which would be a nova as opposed to a major CME. See, a CME is bad enough because it could take down the grid or something. But when you have a nova event, like I say, not a supernova, you know, the sun survives, you know, but as some people have theorized, right, that every 12,000 years, this, you know, our star, the sun, has this nova, right? And that 12,000 years, this 10,600, 12,000 years, that cycle keeps coming up in so many different things, you know, as a cataclysm occurring. You know, and people have different ideas on and tales on what it is. Oh, and by the way, yes, you know, the latest calculations on this whole 2012, remember that whole Mayan calendar thing? Is that when you take into consideration changes in calendars and all that stuff, basically 2024 is another key year that keeps coming up and is the end of the Mayan calendar, by the way. 2024. Which is supposedly just the end of a cycle. It's not like supposed to be not necessarily a cataclysm. But that seems to be the latest, you know, from the folks who study that stuff on a more serious level, like people that look at it from a standpoint of calculations, not, you know, mythology. So, yeah, there's crazy stuff going on all around us. And, you know, this stuff is just not really, and instead people talk about politics and the government and governors' races and what's going to happen in this election and that, you know, and politicians and the cult of personality and and social issues like Me Too or, whatever, all kinds of stuff like that. And it's like, it's not like any of these issues that people raise aren't worth or important, to be cognizant of. But they're blown completely out of proportion for the sake of, like I say on my shirt, then what? Like, it's like if you give the radicals, these people the protesters or whatever, all these crazies, everything they want. My question to them is, then what? You're going to have what? Utopia? Right? What? Like what? You see what I mean? We were doing just fine before these people started getting crazy. I mean, the world was by no means a peaceful, safe place. But it was a lot safer and, than it's getting now. I don't know. It's crazy. And I don't know what they're going to do if it's really super cold in the northern latitudes this year and they're trying to put restrictions on carbon-based fuels. It's the only thing that can cool us. I mean, warm us up. There is nothing else can produce that kind of energy. Heat, thermal energy. So anyway, it falls in the same category as what are you supposed to eat? Everything is wrong. What you don't know, you don't know. It's game over pretty much so. But there's some interesting things going on in AR, VR, and AR. And it's just a pity that people, seem the media, big media, and these lobbyists and these greed, oriented, big ag, big tech, big pharma. They're forcing the focus on things that will make them profitable. And I saw there was something like 400 jets went to private jets were at that climate conference this last week or something like that. 400 private jets that flew there on carbon-based fuels. And all these billionaires who are outspoken on these issues and stuff and saying, oh, it's like a horrible thing, climate change, climate crisis. They all have private jets. Or they live in these ridiculously big mansions that consume all kinds of stuff. Yeah, some of them have solar power and stuff like that. But, the amount of energy used to build those places, and maintain stuff, and for them to be flying, jet setting around the world, it's just such a hypocrisy. And so if you're going to focus on health, why don't you really focus on health? And the medical profession, the medical industry, because that's what this is. It's all big business. They're leaving us out here to fend for ourselves, right? And it's very frustrating. Fend for yourself. Eat this, don't eat that. Do this, don't do that. Right? Here, all these things advertised on TV. People think it's okay. Well, it's advertised on TV. Everybody seems to be eating this. Right? And the FDA doesn't say anything about that. Right? But they tell you to do other things about this thing that's been going on for 2.5 years. Well, if you're going to, it's like everything else. It's like how they cherry pick on climate crisis, certain years, and they skip, the hot Dust Bowl years or the cold, 70s, or the floods in the 70s and the big storms that we used to have in fairly, prior to, this so-called when things started getting hotter or the CO2 increased. They just cherry pick or didn't, skip over those. And it's like, that's the same with this. They don't want you to be healthy. Or, are they putting something in those foods that, will somehow preserve you? People talk about preservatives in food. I said that jokingly years ago. I used to say that. I said, maybe these preservatives in food are preserving people. And so maybe that's why that person that goes to McDonald's, or eats the burger, lives to be 80, and the person that eats raw vegetables and, eats right, dies at, an earlier age. I mean that jokingly, half-heartedly, but, who knows? It's advertised on TV. That would be my answer, to the doc. Well, they advertise it on TV. Eat this. And there's 15 foods to avoid. You should see that. That was ridiculous. I couldn't believe it. I'm going like, it's not like I eat that stuff every day, but occasionally I wouldn't mind. And this idea that certain things, certain, like a nuts or something, are good for one part of your body, but bad for another part of your body, right? A certain drink, some people say coffee is good for your heart or good for something, and other people say avoid it. I went to an electrocardiologist. She said, well, don't drink coffee. But then I had someone else, another doctor, say, no, coffee's okay. It's good for your heart. It's like, what? So I drink some coffee in the morning now. Mainly for regularity. Helps with that. Or something to do. But you don't know. I don't know. It's the same with, like I say, antibiotics and stuff. You can ask 4 different, you go to a dozen sites on the internet and it's total conflicts. And I was very, very conflicted the first several days I was taking this thing, because everything I saw pointed to, you don't eat this, don't eat fiber, don't eat this, don't eat that. And I'm like, oh man, I just had breakfast. I had like a high fiber breakfast. I had some, some yogurt. I had some, whatever, slice of Swiss cheese or something in a sandwich. Healthy sandwich with some kale and stuff like that. And then I find out I'm on like the last day of these things basically coming up. And now they're saying, oh, you could eat anything with them. It's my doctor said it, so I guess it's got to be true. I don't know what you want. My cat has been very like weird lately. So I don't know. I hope it doesn't sense that I've got some illnesses or something, because it's been really weird. I don't know. Hey, I hope I'm here, doing these things, Good morning. I guess it's time to go. So thanks for watching. And if you want to help me out, visit my website, get my book, get some shirts. They're good gifts. Go to Great Solar Stuff. You'll probably need it. If we're going to have that cold of winter, there's going to be some power outages, some ice on trees falling over power lines and things like that. You saw what happened to Texas last year. You need those power packs and keep it charged. You can charge it on your house. You don't have to. It's not all solar only. You just have solar capability. You can just buy one, like the basic one, for like $199. You can get a weather radio that could emergency charge your cell phone for like $35 or something. Anyway, talk to you tomorrow, hopefully.